Hey. All right. Let's get this thing underway. Okay, should be live now, if I had to guess. Let me make sure. Sound check. Perfect. Oh god. Let me do the tweet. Let me do the tweet. Let me do the tweet. Okay. Let me see. Doing the tweets. Really feel like I should have been more prepared for this, if I'm being entirely honest, but yet here we are. We're getting there. We're getting there. We're getting there. We're getting there. So, man, I really should have been more prepared for this. I'm not going to lie. Let's go ahead and get everything else ready to go. Everything else should be pretty much ready to go. I don't know how long we're going to go today. Let me see. I really, really should have been more prepared for this. But at the same time, I think we are almost pretty much good to go. We're going to be chatting about the current state of Purdue basketball, with hopefully a bit more of a focus of the bigger picture, a bit more focus on relaxing, settling down, and focusing on what we as fans can control, and kind of, really taking in the idea of what options are ahead for us, what options are ahead for Purdue, what's going into these last few weeks of the season. And then I originally wanted to go into a bit more of detail on the past two games, but I think after last night, I don't know if that's necessarily a direction I want to take this anymore. But first, let me go ahead and get this started. But we are now a go for the audio version of this as well. So welcome everyone in to the next episode, daily, weekly show of the Runaway Train Sports Podcast, both the live version over on YouTube as well as the audio only version on your favorite podcasting app, site, whatever you wish to listen to. We're going to be talking about a bit about the current state of Purdue basketball and the different kinds of things that we have to look forward to over these last 5 games of the regular season, and then going into the Big Ten tournament as well as the NCAA tournament. But the first thing I wanted to talk about is kind of the high level things that we saw these last couple of games out with the Northwestern Wildcats as well as the Maryland Terrapins. Obviously, we're not going to go into too much detail because there are a lot better podcasts and resources out there to go really in depth with those specific things. I mean, I don't really even want to look at stats. I don't even really need to look at stats. I think my place here in the Purdue Twitter space can kind of center more around, the high level stuff. The big picture is keeping things relatively calm and trying to spread around a little bit of optimism, where I think especially the people of Twitter, if you've been around Purdue Twitter at all this past week, essentially, I think that's something that we all could use desperately. So let's go ahead and talk big picture over the last 2 games. Purdue is on a current and active 2-game losing streak, something that no one ever wants to see, especially when you have the year that Purdue has kind of had so far this season. And so the last couple of games have been a bit different in more ways than one. Not going to go into too many specifics, but I think we all know exactly what we're talking about, the level of physicality in these games and the level of officiating has definitely been a bit different than the rest of the season seems to have been done up until this point in the season. And so realistically, Purdue's lost 3 out of the last 4, one of which is a tough road game at Indiana. I don't think any of us faulted for us to lose there. I don't even think many of us were really expecting to go to Maryland, especially the way that we played them at home not but a couple of weeks ago. And so I think the most disappointing thing over the last week has really been that game at Northwestern, and when the game really kind of just got away from us. And the way that game ended put probably the more sour taste in our mouths than any of the other losses we've had so far this season. The at Maryland game, I think, was just kind of the culmination of the last few games. I mean, taking out the Iowa game at home, I think playing Maryland last night was kind of the culmination of everything that we were kind of expecting to see, and kind of the way things have kind of gone the last couple of weeks. And so I think we all definitely have a bit of a sour taste in our mouths, but at the same time, Purdue still controls their own destiny in the Big Ten. We are, I think, currently, as of today, a 1.5 game lead in the Big Ten. Of course, we would have much rather it been a 3-game lead, but at the same time, I think, being, what are we now? 23-4 and mid-February, I don't think anyone can realistically say that you can be too disappointed in that when you take a step back and look at the season as a whole. But I went back and forth a lot on everything I wanted to cover in this live, but I think I kind of had a moment before this where I've kind of just been relaxing upstairs. It's Friday afternoon, the work week is over, and I kind of had a moment of realization that sports are ultimately silly and dumb. And so I think something important to do is to take a step back and appreciate everything that we've had so far up to the season. And the fact that we can legitimately say going into, February 17th of this season that Purdue is really hitting their first real wall of the season in February. And I know everyone is just going to say that champions aren't crowned in February. Some subsect of Purdue fandom would probably say that Purdue is the continual February national champions. It's just one of those things that if you get so granularly focused on the individual day-to-day, I think sometimes it can get pretty difficult to really, get nailed in and appreciate everything that we've had up to this point. Like I said, Purdue still has everything ahead of them. I don't think any of us would have said no if we said that we would be at this kind of points, this far into the season. And like we said, even with losing the last 3 or 4, every bracketology I've seen still has Purdue as a 1 seed, maybe not in the preferred region as of right now, but I don't think that's still off the table as we continue moving forward. I think Purdue still has everything to play for, and realistically, everything is still more than ready for and prepared for us to kind of get over this bit of slump that we're going through. Purdue gets 3 of their last 4 at home, but we only have 4 games left. Ooh, this is where I really should have prepared. We'll do it live. I don't care. We'll do it live. I'm not one to pretend that I'm the most prepared person in the entire world. So let me check that real quick because I don't want to give, any facts that are too wrong. I don't think anyone would blame me for being taking the time to be too correct or incorrect. There we go. ESPN, thank you. But that's 4 games left. I should have known that. I think these last couple of games have kind of really put a mental block on that portion of my brain. So Purdue has 4 games left, 3 of 4 at home. The only road game left is at Wisconsin. We get Ohio State, Indiana, and Illinois at home, with Illinois closing the regular season. I mean, realistically, what are we talking about here? We're talking about taking care of business against a struggling Ohio State team. We're welcoming Indiana into hopefully what will be a very daunting home environment for them as they then go on the road. And then at Wisconsin is always going to be a weird one. I think at Wisconsin and Purdue just weirdly just don't go together extremely well. So that's going to be a very just weird game. I feel like that game is always just a blanket, just call it weird, get in, hopefully get the W and get out before hosting Illinois at home, who's kind of been a weirdly roller coastery type team this season. They've had a couple of departures from young guys and just some weird chemistry and up and downs that they've had so far this season. But all right, what else do we want to talk about? We've already been going for 10 minutes. That sounds absolutely wild to me. Let me see what else I put in the notes. Kind of touched on Northwestern and Maryland. I don't want to repeat anything that definitely hasn't already been said over the course of social media from other people. I mean, Purdue's struggling right now. I think that's pretty fair to say. I think it's also fair to say that, Matt Painter has every available opportunity to get this team refocused, readjust to, these last 4 games and getting things moving forward. Kind of like I was saying, that Purdue still has everything in front of them, and I'm hoping that another home game would be kind of nice after this stretch where it feels like the way not only our teams playing Purdue, but also the way the officiating is going over these last few games. I think a game at home in the friendly confines of Mackey Arena could do this team a lot of good. I think not only us fans, but also these players are probably more than excited to get back into Mackey and hopefully get over this weird hump that is plaguing them a little bit. It'll be interesting to see if Ohio State tries to employ the same kind of tactics that Northwestern and Maryland employed, and see if Purdue at home can get a bit more of a friendly whistle to kind of settle things down and hopefully get the officiating back on track the way that we would all like the game to go. And I'm sure, even though they don't realize it and they're actively working against it, that the conference would also like it to go, because, man, if Purdue has to play their final 6 games the same way that these last 2 have gone, or these last 3 out of 4 have gone, man, I don't know how we can really expect, the league to really do much going into the Big Ten tournament as well as into the NCAA tournament with the way that everything is going. They've definitely done a number into tightening up the conference race. Purdue, like I said, sits 1.5 games above Northwestern of all teams, sitting at 10-5, 19-7 overall. Your Northwestern Wildcats currently sitting in second place. Maryland and Indiana tied at 9-6, 2.5 games back, along with Iowa. The top of the Big Ten is just very odd. It's just very, very odd. I'm not going to take too much stock into who Purdue's beaten, who Purdue's lost to. I think at this point, all I want to see out of this team is, which is not even fair to say, but a little more mental toughness, which even isn't even exactly the way I want to put it. I think these last couple of games have just really beaten these guys down, the way that the officiating has gone. And I think that's entirely fair. I think that the way that teams are allowed to play Purdue right now, putting myself in their shoes, I couldn't imagine having to go a full 40 minutes of, Big Ten basketball on back-to-back game nights where you were just getting the crap beaten out of you and you're expected to go out there and be perfect still. I think that's something that really just doesn't sit well with me. And I'm hoping that things can get turned around, because if not, things can get pretty slippery really fast. And also you're running a lot of risk of some people getting hurt that I don't think anybody wants to see, no matter who you're really a fan of. But I don't know if we have anyone in the chat who has anything they want to touch on. I titled this Purdue Therapy. So if anyone has anything they want to bring up, want to talk about, want to work through, I'm all for it. Other than that, I think I kind of just wanted, I really debated on even if I wanted to do this. I think that is kind of how last night kind of left a bit of a bad taste in everyone's mouths. But I realized kind of also today that at the same time, we need to start, I say we, I think I mean more of me, that, these things happen. And I think I put it on Twitter as well yesterday. I didn't expect it to turn around on us so quickly, but, now it seems like every team that has been deemed, good or contending for one of the best teams in the country has kind of just taken one on the chin a bit unexpectedly, and they've been able to all bounce back. I think the biggest difference is, and I kind of mentioned this as well on Twitter last night, is that it seems like every other team has gotten their bumps a bit earlier and has a bit more of a runway leading out of the regular season than Purdue currently does, with only a handful of games remaining. And so it'll be interesting to see this team respond. I think we're going to get a struggling Ohio State team coming into Mackey, and I'm hoping that we can rattle them early and hopefully get a bit of a get-right game and kind of settle into what, Purdue basketball we desire that to look like. But at the same time, it's going to take a lot. I think there's a lot of things that this coaching staff is going to have to be pointing at, and these guys are going to have to kind of take to heart. I think that's something I saw online, was that we really wish that this team would start playing with that chip on their shoulder again. I think they're kind of a bit down on themselves right now, and I would love to see them kind of get back up, brush off the dirt and the dust from getting beaten this badly, and start playing the way that they kind of were when they went out to Portland at the beginning of the season. Start playing with a bit more of that fire and a bit more of that underdogness that I'm sure a lot of Purdue fans have desired to see all season long. I don't know how much comfort a lot of people get from being the number one team in the country and considered to be one of the best teams in the land this year. And now we kind of, hopefully for them, and I guess in a bit of a way, start to embody that underdog role once again, and maybe we'll be able to turn things around. But it's going to start, like I said, with Ohio State on Sunday. I guess we can go ahead and take a look at that. And boy, oh boy, what a journey this season has been for Ohio State. I think I saw, I can't remember if it was BTN put up a graphic the other night, maybe it was last night, kind of demonstrating just how far Ohio State has fallen, where I think they started the season 10-2, and since then they're 1-11 or something like that. Where looking at their schedule, I mean, just looking at the first half of their season, I'm seeing a lot of green W's, and the second, ever since they lost to Purdue, they've only beaten Iowa at home, and they've lost every other game, which also includes a 3-point home loss to last place Minnesota, which currently sits as Minnesota's only Big Ten win this season. And so Ohio State is going to be a bit of a challenging turnaround for them, and especially to then have to come to Mackey, hopefully taking another beating from Purdue before they get Penn State at home, Illinois at home, Maryland at home, and then they finish up the season at Michigan State. But that matchup is going to be very interesting. I think, man, I think the worst case scenario for Purdue fans is going to be if Purdue comes out a little flat against Ohio State and lets them stick around for 15 minutes, a half. I think that Purdue, the collective mental state of Purdue Twitter specifically, is on such a razor thin edge at this point that I really, really hope for their sake that Purdue is able to come out, establish themselves early, and at minimum, hopefully, I'll say this for the officials' sake, I hope they start to call it a bit closer and a bit more fairly towards these guys, because I don't think they would, I don't know if they would escape Mackey Arena alive, or at minimum with their eardrums intact, from the amount of booing that would ensue if the games kind of continue to get called, especially on Sunday, the way that it has been the last couple of nights out. But we really need to see some good things out of Purdue. We need to see Zach get a little more reestablished down low, as well as, I would love to see a good shooting night. I would love to see a solid, 5 for 12. If you're looking at like 7 for 16 or 17 kind of nights. I think Purdue getting a few threes to go down would do a lot for their confidence as well, because they have not shot the ball very well. I know there's a lot of conspiracy talk about the difference between like the Wilson balls that I believe we played the last couple of nights out with, and it just has not gone particularly well with those balls. And so I think it's going to be a little interesting, as let's see, against Northwestern, it wasn't as bad, but we shot 22.7%, 5 of 22. And then against Maryland, we shot 2 of 13 for 15%. So I think it got us, if we could get a 35% shooting night from deep against Ohio State, I think that would do a lot for confidence as we continue to move forward. But I would love to see man, it's tough. It's so tough because the way that teams have been allowed to defend Zach Edey down low has really just put a log jam in this offense because not even Zach Edey specifically, but the way the physicality that they were allowed to get away with when for offensive rebounds specifically. I think I saw that Purdue only managed about a 10% offensive rebound rate against the Terrapins when I think their season average is north of 33, like 35% or something like that. I think that's one of the biggest, advantages that Purdue has is on the offensive glass with Zach down there. But I mean, we've all seen screenshots and videos and everything that the things that Zach is getting done to him, man, I don't wish that on our worst enemies realistically, because that dude takes a beating and does not get, very much in return for it. So it'll be a very interesting night out, I'm sure. I think this is going to be a very telling game against Ohio State. I don't know if you really can say much more besides that. It's hard to say that every game is a must-win from now on, but I mean, Purdue just needs to do and take care of the games that they need to. They need to win their games at home, and they at this point at Wisconsin, I think would do a lot for the confidence of this team as well as the fans at large, and that if they can go on the road, have another good showing on the road after a start of a season in which they were very, very good on the road. I think they started the season 7-0 on the road in the Big Ten or on the road in true road games. Not something you get to see every day. So I think a final good road showing at Wisconsin before we head back against Illinois and then the Big Ten tournament on the neutral sites. I know Purdue played pretty well on neutral site games so far this season. So hopefully that can continue. But realistically, man, it's so hard to look at these last couple of games and feel really good. But at the same time, when you actually look at what teams are having to do and having to, be allowed to do to beat Purdue, I think nobody wants to say moral victories. I know moral victories don't go a long way when you're talking about official records and numbers and resume and everything. But the things that these teams are having to do to beat Purdue is a lot. It's a lot, to say the least. And the fact that they're able to get away with it the way they have been is, I'm not going to say downright shameful on the conference, but I know this is a talking point. I don't want to belabor it any more than we have to. But, the way that, especially this year, maybe it's just this year that it's becoming a lot more overt, but it's one of those things where everyone always says that it's no wonder that the Big Ten always struggles in the NCAA tournament, because when you get down the stretch and you've had an entire conference season of this style of play and you hit the end of the season when it starts to matter even more, and you see games like at Northwestern, you see games like at Maryland, you see games like Indiana at Northwestern, and the way that these defenses are allowed to just beat on the other team and kind of get away with it, man, it's no wonder that these teams start to adjust, play the same way, and then all of a sudden you get to March and no one knows what to do because you've been playing a completely different way than everyone else, and you just don't have the time to adjust. You get one off night and you get called for a bunch of fouls because that's the way you've been playing, and then that's kind of all she wrote. We've seen it a lot. I mean, in the last handful of years, I mean, the reputation of the Big Ten is very bad right now when it comes to the NCAA tournament, because realistically, I mean, we get a bunch of teams in, but at the same time, the style of play that we try to bring to the NCAA tournament just doesn't work. And when it's a single elimination, you win or you're out, it really comes back to bite you in the end. So I don't know what to say. I think Ohio State, I want to see the top three things I would love to see is I would love to see our shooters get going again. I think that seeing the ball go through the net would do loads for the confidence of these guys as we, finish up these last few games. I would love to see, I'll say that one for last. I would love to see Zach kind of reassert himself down low. I think he's kind of taken a lot more of a passive role the way that teams have been physically doubling him. I think, and I know this is easier said than done, but it seems like he's gotten really timid on, going for these powerful post moves because he knows the double is coming. And so it's almost as if he doesn't really even look for his shot all the time. I know he'll go through stretches where he'll try and reassert himself, but I'd love to see him play a lot more off of 2 feet, solid, he is very good at it, but he's kind of like running off, riding the defender, trying to get a foul call and kind of like lay it in on the run. While he's very good at it, the way that teams have been allowed to defend him, that becomes a very low percentage shot. And I think I would much rather him just play off 2 feet. Not necessarily, he's taking a beating. We're not going to say he's not, but it seems like even sometimes when he gets into these hook shots and he's getting the body moved into, it's almost like he's playing more for the foul than to just use his 7'4", 300-pound frame to hold off the defender as much as he can and go up strong and, put the ball in the basket that way. Again, I'm not blaming Zach at all in this. It's definitely comes down to more officiating, which leads me into my last point, which is I would love to just see one consistently called game. It feels like we've seen the last, I don't know how many nights out where one team is allowed to do something, but when you go to the other side of the floor, all of a sudden you have these ticky-tack fouls that just don't make any sense when you look at the context of the other end of the floor. If the refs and officials want to let a physical, punchy game happen, then they need to kind of let that go on both ends of the floor. I don't think it's necessarily, don't even want to use the term fair, but I don't want to have a situation with like Northwestern is the perfect example where you have one team who is being extremely physical, getting away with a lot of contact and grabbing and holding and all this stuff. And then you turn around and you have like Trey Kaufman-Wren is the perfect example, which seems like he gets one or two of these every night, where he'll do the same thing that everyone else is doing to him. And all of a sudden he'll get, a quick foul call or a quick 2 foul calls or anything like that. It doesn't, I would love just one night where it's consistent on both ends of the floor, where the refs can finally just decide what's a foul and stick with it. Because I think that's what angers everyone the most is just the inconsistency between one side of the floor and the other. That's all I want to see. If we can do those 3 things, I think we'll do very well. I think it's hard. It's hard to say. It really just comes down to that. But at the end of the day, those are the 3 major things that are going to allow Purdue to win games. I think when you have to try and adjust and you get frustrated and, low key peeved at officials and it takes you out of your game. I think that's a big thing. I would love to see, and again, I don't want to just lay all of Purdue's problems at this, but I would love to see some mental toughness, play with a chip on our shoulder, go out there, dominate the other team, not worry so much about the officials, to the point of, you're not bowling through people and expecting not to get away with it. But at the same time, it's like it seems like in the last couple of games, and again, granted, a lot of these are very justified, but at the same time, it seemed like Maryland specifically, and a little bit at Northwestern down the stretch, where Purdue just seemed so fed up with these officials that they got completely rattled and just lost focus, and it kind of just got away from them in the end. And I know this is going to be easier said than done. As a person, granted, I only played through high school, but when you play basketball and it always feels like the officials are against you, that gets very frustrating, and it gets very hard to maintain focus in the long run. But it is really frustrating. And again, this is a therapy session. I guess I'm working out my own frustrations with the way the last couple of games have gone. And I hate being the person who just throws it all at the refs' feet, the officials' feet, and say that's why we lost. No, Purdue lost for a lot of other small reasons than that. But the way that the games are official, the way that their job on the court is to keep things fair and balanced, and really to make sure that neither side gains an unfair advantage. And they're just not doing that right now. And it's really, Mackey could get energetic, we'll say that, if that trend continues in West Lafayette on Sunday. But I don't know. I'm still extremely excited for the rest of the season. I know it seemed like a lot of people over the last couple of days have kind of jumped ship, not necessarily fully jumped ship, but there's been a lot of talk about a lot of things that we don't need to go into here. But I think being able to have these conversations, look at the bigger picture, take a step back and just, realize that sports are silly, realize that there are bigger things going on than just, the silly sport that we all love. I know it's very easy, especially as we get down towards the end of the year, to kind of get enthralled and, very invested in the results of these games. But at the same time, on the grand scheme of things, point one is that this is sport. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be, this thing that, while it does matter, it's not gravity defying, this gravity defying thing in our day-to-day lives. And so, that's why I tweeted that thing earlier about, it was a beautiful day outside. And while I'm still extremely disappointed in the way the game went yesterday, it was a beautiful day. Weather was perfect. And honestly, we're extremely lucky that we get to be in the position that we're in to, graduate from such a, prestigious and amazing university, as well as get to enjoy this team, which has, I had a realization the other day that when I went to Purdue in my freshman year was the 2013 and 14 season, where Purdue finished last in the Big Ten, and really it was not going well. And since then, Purdue has only gotten better. So one, you're welcome. I got to Purdue. We had our one last bad year, and it really has only risen from there. I mean, we're complaining about the end of a season in which Purdue spent many, many weeks at the number one overall spot in the AP poll. They've been considered one of the best teams in the country this season, which is something that historically has not really been Purdue's thing. I mean, even last season, which was considered to be one of Painter's best teams ever, even this season, it might surpass them even in that. And so realistically, we're in a very privileged spot. I mean, everything is still ahead of us. Everything is still going forward. I couldn't be more excited to see how this team wraps up this season and kind of get to celebrate the absolutely incredible season that we've had. It feels like the season has flown by. I don't know about you guys, but I remember, man, I rewatched the highlights of the Marquette game the other day, and I realized that was the third game of the season. I remember watching that game. It was the third game of the season, and it was a good one. Who would have thought that the Marquette win would be probably Purdue's best win of the season at this point? That's a crazy thing to think about when you realize how long ago that was. But I remember them going to Portland, and all of those games, that weekend was probably one of the greatest weekends that we've ever had. Granted, the Duke and Gonzaga wins have kind of teetered off a little bit, but at the same time, the magnitude of those wins then and were not to be understated. And it's been a great season. It's been extremely fun. Sure, some of the losses have been a bit demoralizing. The losses have been a bit rough, but at the same time, I think I saw a stat which was like what? I think it was like it's either 7 of 8 or now like 8 of 10, something like Purdue's last however many losses. Like the other team has rushed the court, which means that all of those losses have also came on the road, which is we didn't even touch on really, but it is extremely hard to win on the road in conference. I know Purdue started off the season just winning every game on the road in conference, but it's not an easy thing to do. And when you lose games on the road and the other team rushes the court, I mean, it hurts. It does. It hurts every single time because generally when they rush the court, they generally didn't think that they were going to win. And that means that we as Purdue fans probably expected to win as well. Or at least some of us did. It hurts. It does. It hurts a lot. But at the same time, and I tweeted it again last night. I tweet a lot of stuff. If you don't follow me on Twitter, hey, you can find that. I don't even know if it's linked on my channel. I don't know. I need to look at this. But it means you're a good team. That means you're worth storming the court for. And I know that Purdue's not playing their best basketball right now, but it's still an accomplishment for these teams to overcome Purdue. And really, that as a high level thing is extremely, it's a good thing, guys. It really is. But unless anyone has anything else to talk about, I've been going for over 30 minutes at this point. I think I've covered pretty much everything I wanted to. I mean, like I was saying at the top, I'm not necessarily going to be the guy you guys want to come to for, deep dive into statistics, inferring different things. You have guys like Joe Jackson on Twitter who dive into, it seems like every play. But I've kind of inserted myself into, Purdue space online as a guy to kind of keep people grounded, keep the optimism up, keep the vibes pretty well, as long as I don't even know what to say, along with positive Purdue vibes. And so just doing our best to kind of keep the vibes up. We've had a very fun year. I know the last week has been the most rough of the season so far, except for maybe that point where we had it felt like 3 weeks without Purdue basketball later around New Year's. But at the same time, this has been a lot of fun. I can't wait for Sunday when Ohio State comes to visit. I wish I could be there in Mackey. I think the energy is going to be palpable. It's going to be a lot of fun. But until then, if you guys are here, go ahead, hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't. I'm going to try and do these at minimum at least once a week, generally aiming for Friday around 5 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Eastern. And I also want to start having some more people on. So if you have any ideas, people you would like me to have on, or people I could reach out to, you can always DM me on Twitter, or just at me on Twitter, or leave comments below this, and I'll definitely try and start doing that. I love doing these. I love chatting Purdue basketball. My passion borders on obsession. I'm sure everyone here can kind of agree on that. But if no one has anything, I'm going to wrap it up there. And we'll probably see you guys next week for another edition of the show. And as always, brother up, hammer down, hail Purdue. See you guys.